So I know y'all are used to seeing only one of us, but we are one biblically, so it's still okay. Physically, we'll still use two mics, though. I'm actually going to hold it too. So a little bit different sermon tonight. I'm going to wrap up afterwards with a couple verses and a little something. But the last time that you guys were here, I'm Samuel. This is Esther, my wife, by the way. Last time we were here at youth was back in, I think it was beginning of June, and we talked about music. And after that, we said, hey, everybody, guess what? We're moving to Massachusetts, and we're not going to be back for an extended amount of time. We left. We had a whole bunch of surgeries. We had a whole bunch of events happen, and now we're back. And we're so happy to be with you guys. And we missed you guys, and we love you guys. And we just want to take a little bit of time. Just tonight seems to be a bit of a testimony night. We're going to tell a little testimony about what God did for us and through you guys and through us. And then we'll just wrap up after that. So, Esther, you go ahead and start if you like, just kind of from where we started with this whole thing.
So on May 25th, that's Rebecca's birthday. We were planning to celebrate her first birthday, but that's also the day that we were supposed to find out the gender of our baby. So we went to our appointment before our cupcake celebration with Rebecca. And that's when we found out that we have a boy, that he also has spina bifida. And if you don't know what spina bifida is, you can explain what it is.
Yeah, if any of y'all know Esther's brother Isaac in the wheelchair, he has spina bifida also. It's a spine condition where basically your spinal column doesn't develop right and your spinal cord is all coming out into the amniotic fluid. And basically it just destroys your nerves. So wherever the issue is, from there down, you lose nerve function. Most kids who have this condition are wheelchair bound. Most of them can't use the bathroom on their own. They can't feel anything from the waist down. And Esther is particularly is very familiar with that. So hearing that news,
It wasn't great.
yeah, that was devastating.
So, and our doctor then says, obviously she asked the question, she said, I have to ask you this, do you guys want to terminate the pregnancy? And obviously we said no. And
yeah, he's right back there, so we said no.
She was really cool with that. She said, I know your beliefs, I know what you're going to say, but I still have to ask that question. So after we said no, she said there is a surgery that they started doing. They would fix the spine, close the spine early in the pregnancy. And we got excited, I mean, as much as we could. What's next?
Well, we basically got hope. They told us that you have this surgery potential. It's an in utero surgery that would fix everything before the baby's born and hopefully reverse or prevent a lot of that damage from happening. Because a lot of times babies have that damage because they carry all the way to term with this defect. So they said, well, if we can repair it halfway through the pregnancy, then maybe he'll be born with a chance at leg mobility and some different functions that he wouldn't otherwise have.
And the longer that the spine is open, the more nerve damage he'll get, and we didn't want that, so we decided to go with the surgery. So we got that hope, and a couple days later, it was actually the young couples retreat on Memorial Day, I think. I don't remember. It was a Monday, and we're hopeful that we're going to do the surgery. We're excited. The next day on Tuesday, we get a phone call from my OB, and she said, I'm not qualified for the surgery. No one's going to take us. She called 7 hospitals, and we were devastated. We were very sad. And all the hospitals said no. And the reasons they said no is that when I was pregnant with Rebecca, I had a complication where I started dilating at 22 weeks, and they had to stitch me up, and I was on bed rest. And because of that complication, everyone said, no, I'm not qualified. Then I started calling all the hospitals. I was saying, I will take any risk, just give me this surgery. And obviously they said, no, they can't take the risk. A week later, it was a very emotional roller coaster. We were just crying and praying, which it was hard to pray, and that's why it's nice to have a big community of believers that could pray for you. And my doctor on Wednesday, it was a week after on Wednesday, she called me and she said she knows a doctor in Connecticut that might take you. He just started this surgery, that he opened up this fetal clinic, that he might take you, but she was not optimistic at all. She said it's our last chance, and if he doesn't take us, we basically don't have any hope to get the surgery. So on Thursday, I don't know how many of you know, but there's this prayer group that goes on Thursdays with Brat Vasi Fabinchuk. But we went there and they prayed for me. And there was a word from God, and it said, «Так говорит Господь, проси у Господа, чтобы милость Он протянул. И была дана она вовремя. Она уже нужна сегодня. Народ мой, возови, молись, милость Господня пришла, незаслуженная, но от Господа, милующая рука протянута душе сей. Вопияй, вопияй, ибо есть отвечающий. Только не усомнись, что Бог ответит. Аминь. And then the next day, I got a phone call from my OB. And she said that the doctor is considering us. It was like an answered prayer right away.
Yeah, that was something that, you're going through that, and it's cool because you start seeing that even though emotionally we're doing this roller coaster, and that's a good term because I hate roller coasters. So it was horrible to go through, but through it all, our hearts were set on the Lord, and we were surrounded by tons of believers who were praying for us and supporting us, and going and having that prophecy over Esther. He's like, look, just don't doubt, just trust the Lord. He's merciful. Just reaffirming that faith. And then I think after that Thursday, we drove out of that parking lot, and we hadn't had an answer yet, and we were like, God's going to do something. We knew it. We didn't know what, but we knew that, okay, the Lord is going to do something with this.
Yeah. So when the doctor said that he's considering us, he also said, one of the things that you're going to have to do is move to Connecticut and stay there until the baby is born. So for us, we're like, yeah, we'll move anywhere as long as we can get the surgery. We had another week, and we were kind of on a time crunch because they only do these surgeries from 23 weeks to 26 weeks, and at that time I was 24 weeks, I believe. So we're kind of running on this time crunch. And then before I could get the surgery, I had to go through all these tests, make sure I'm a candidate for that. And we did all these tests, and finally we got our green light. And as soon as we got our green light, I think within 3 days, we packed our apartment into a bunch of boxes and put everything into a storage unit. We broke our lease, got in a car, left Rebecca here with my parents, and drove to Connecticut. In our car, we had just an air mattress, a couple plates, a couple cups, mugs, a couple snacks, just something to survive off.
Did we bring the teapot?
Yes,
I
and
think
we left it at
every
their
Russian
house.
family, you have to bring the teapot. We didn't have a bed or a place to live, but we had the Chinese, so it's okay.
And the coffee maker.
And the coffee maker.
On the way to Connecticut, we actually got to meet up with our youth at Ohio, I believe. got to eat there for free, and we head back to Connecticut.
That was fun because we were on the way. I remember. So, and this is just an example, and we'll talk about this later about how God used our Slavic family to provide for us along the way. You know, I want to say, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was Columbus, Ohio. You guys the youth had all gone out on this big trip, and you guys were all driving around, and there's this little Ukrainian church, I believe. And we're driving, and Ilias, Esther's brother, texts us, and he's like, "Where are you guys at?" He's like stalking us on our phones.
Well, my location was on, and so was his.
Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I was like, how does he know where we are? And he's like, you guys are really close to us. So it turns out the city that we were staying in was about an hour past the city where you guys were having a big youth event at this Ukrainian church. And so we were like, all right, we'll stop by. And you guys were literally there as we were driving through. I mean, the timing, 2,000 plus miles away. And we were there on the same night. And so we pull in and we smell horrible. Yeah. And we're in our road clothes because we've been traveling all day. And we've been eating nothing but like beef jerky and chips for days and hotel breakfasts, which is not real food. And then we show up and there's this wonderful church and all of our friends and this wonderful food. And it was such
like the last bits of the sermon.
Yeah, like the last sermon. But it was such a relief you guys were like an oasis in the desert, like getting us the fuel to keep going.
So on the way to Connecticut, we didn't have a place to stay. Our plan was we get there, we go through all these appointments that we have, and we're just going to stay in a hotel, and hopefully before the surgery we find a studio or something that's cheap and close to the hospital. So I'm going through Zillow looking at places to stay because we've asked a couple people. We asked a couple people in our church and people, and they said they don't know anyone in Massachusetts or Connecticut. And then Teta Tanya Ignashova and Teta Volodya apparently have a sister in Massachusetts, Teta Tanya's oldest sister, and she had a renovated basement. And we got contacts, and she said that we are more than welcome to stay there, and she wouldn't charge us. So that was like an answered prayer. We were looking for something, and one day at a time, God is just providing for us, giving what we need. And she actually had a oldest daughter that was supposed to get married in October, and she lived in the basement. And as a family, they decided, well, why not just help out a family? And yeah, we had a room, couches, a table, and a bathroom, all to ourselves.
Yeah, it was like a studio.
Yeah, it was like a studio, but better, because it's free. So when we get to Connecticut, we got to Connecticut on Tuesday evening. Teta Tanya prepared this whole meal. I think she had a borscht or something, but it was better than road trip food. Oh, yeah. And the next day, from the very morning, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we had appointments and had consults with doctors, and it was just busy days. Sunday comes, and her church has baptism, and we decided, well, since we're staying with a very nice family, we might as well go to their church and see what's that all about. And the church actually was praying for us too, before we even knew it. They were praying for us, so when we get there, they know who we are, and pastor prayed for us with Yilea. And after that, we went to the beach. We had to get our mind off of it, because I knew that the next day is my surgery, so I wanted to do something fun before the surgery. Monday comes, and we have our big day, surgery. Everything went well. How they did the surgery is they opened me up, they took the baby out, they stitched up his spine, just the butt. They not took out his butt, but
They're taking his butt out. Yeah.
they turned him over, so his butt is exposed to the world. A lot of I'm on this Facebook page for spina bifida, and they call it the butt day. The surgery is the butt day because the butt is exposed to the world for the first time. So it's not a full birthday, but they stitched up his back, and they put him back inside, stitched me up, and I was on bed rest. I was, for 48 hours, I was on fentanyl, epidural, and magnesium. And you probably don't know how it feels, but it's the worst feeling ever. In that time, I was actually thinking a lot. I couldn't sleep much because I was sleeping a lot, and my brain was on, my body was off. So I would open my eyes, but everything is blurry and double visioned, and I cannot focus, so I can't even be on my phone. Like that simple thing. So I was either sleeping or with my eyes closed. And in those 48 hours, I realized how miserable people are when they're always on bed rest and always in the hospital, and they can't even care for themselves. And I never thought about it, but I was like, I never want to die like that. Because before that, I was thinking, well, I think it'd be better to die if, I had some sort of a disease so I can prepare myself to get to heaven. But after that, I'm like, no, in my sleep, I just don't want to do this again.
Yeah, it's crazy what you think about when in the hospital. It's like being in the mall or the airport. Like time doesn't exist. It's just like one continuous minute that just drags on. She glossed over the fact that we had the surgery because for her, it was like 5 seconds. She fell asleep, and then she woke up, and she's like, the doctor literally said, oh, it's over? And it was a little longer for me.
It was like 5 hours.
It was 5 hours. It was grueling. It was the worst 5 hours of my life. Because they had prefaced, and we glossed over this a little bit, in all those appointments that we had leading up to this, they're telling us multiple times a day, multiple doctors, baby may not survive, mama might not survive.
There's a lot of risks.
There's a ton of risks. They were almost trying to tell us not to do it. That's how many risks versus benefits there were. And we're looking at this going, there's a chance, that I walk out of this like a single dad with one kid. Slava Bogu, I did not. I'm still married and have 2 kids, and God took care of that. But those 5 hours, I'm sitting in that lobby, and they had some, I don't know, stupid soap opera playing rich people's lives, talking about rich people problems, and it's blasting on the TV, and I'm sitting there, and I'm just praying, and I'm stressing, and then I get distracted by all these like rich people problems, and I'm like going crazy. So I like went out and walked the halls, and my mom is calling, and my sisters are calling, and they're like, hey, how's she doing? How's she doing? I'm like, I don't know. I trust God, but I have no idea how she's doing. Finally, those 5 hours passed, and the doctors came out and said, she's great. Baby's great. Time will tell if anything worked, but for right now, they're doing well.
And before the surgery, when we had all these consults, we were kind of even talking between each other, like, should we actually go for it? Like, it's such a risk to take for the surgery, and the outcome, they weren't even giving us great outcomes. They said the benefits, you might not even see any benefits. But we were constantly going back to that prophecy that we had, and it said just trust God, and like basically everything's going to turn out if we trust God. So we're like, no, we're going to do this, and we finally did it. And a couple of days later, I got discharged, and we went back home to Massachusetts.
And I'm so thankful that we didn't have to put you on an air mattress after that surgery.
Yeah, because I couldn't even sleep in bed. I couldn't even lay straight. I'm like, how am I going to be in a bed, in a air mattress if I can't even be in a normal bed?
Yeah, I remember, and that's an interesting time because you always like read about stuff like this happening or hear about it, but those actual minutes of I'm there in the hospital and she's on the magnesium and she's totally out of it, and you can tell that she's just not all 100% herself, and so I'm going, well, do I leave? Do I be quiet? Do I do stuff? So sometimes I'd like turn on like her Slavic Russian music, and I'd like put it next to the bed. I'm like, I don't know if she can even hear this, but it's good worship music, so you can.
Oh, that was great. I really liked that.
Turns out she did hear it. That was good. And then we get home, and I'm so thankful that we weren't in a cold, empty studio apartment with an air mattress, but we were in an actual, not just a furnished basement, but under the home of a loving, godly family. And so in between all of this, to preface this, going forward, we always had Tita Nadia Kodonova coming down. And she'd be like, oh, I made borscht and my kids won't eat it. Will you eat it? I'm like yes. Oh, I made too many pyrishki. Do you want
I
some?
think she did that on purpose.
She did, 100%. So the hand of the Lord was providing for us the whole time through these people. And they came down and visited Esther and talked with her when she was bed resting.
They would come down every single day.
It's because of her that Rebecca learned to walk, by the way. She's the one that got her to do that. Side note.
Tita Nadia did.
Yeah.
Okay, where were we at?
Yeah, so basically at this point, so we're in Connecticut. When we keep saying Massachusetts and Connecticut, Hartford, Connecticut is right on the northern border of Connecticut.
It's like Vancouver and
Vancouver and
Oregon,
Portland.
Yeah.
So we were living on the south side of Massachusetts. The hospital was north side of Connecticut. So we're there. We're figuring things out. I'm going, okay, well, and at this point, people are sending us gifts, prayers. They're calling us. Our community is just continuing to support us this whole time, which is huge, you guys. You have no idea how huge that is. And I think that just to encourage you guys, that a lot of times I hear a lot of young Slavic people dissing on their Slavic community. Oh, we're so everybody's involved in each other's lives. There's a bad side to that. But man, when you're down and out and you don't have anything to your name and you're going through this going, I'm making life-altering decisions on the daily and what that does to your heart. And then just knowing, okay, I can come home and there's going to be hot soup and hundreds of people praying for me. That's incredible. So we did have a decision to make, though, because Esther's insurance wasn't paying for any of it. So we go out and we find out that there's this massive surgery, and then a foreseeing stays in the hospital, and then a potential stay in the NICU. And those things are like buying houses out here. I mean, it's not cheap. And we're going, okay, we need to find out some insurance. So
my insurance thought it's like a cosmetic procedure that I don't even need to do it. Because none of the other hospitals would take me. They're like, why don't they take you? Why do you need to go across the country to get the surgery? It's not needed. So they said no. And they found a loophole, and they were just going around and around. Even my doctor that took me, Dr. Crumbleholm, he was calling them and trying to make them pay. He said, I don't want you guys paying for this because this is expensive. So he was trying, and we were trying, and they still said no. Yeah,
they called it cosmetic, which was funny. I was like, it's not like a facelift, you guys. We're making my son have a chance to walk, but okay, we'll call it cosmetic.
Also, I found out today, I was talking to one of the medics, and he said that gender reassignment surgeries, insurance would cover. But this, they won't, which...
Little glimpse into our world we live in.
Messed up.
Well, we got basically to this point where we needed insurance, and so I started looking for jobs on the Connecticut side. We're looking, okay, I need a job in the same state that he's going to be born in, because we need insurance in that state. Because we didn't want any of this, funny business between states, because we knew they were going to use that. So we're like, well, let's find a job in Connecticut. And I'm having a rough time because I'm not used to being out of a job. I've gotten used to it, but prior to this point, I go and we're like, okay, the surgery's gone well. Esther's at home. I got to go get my daughter. And I took 24 hours and I flew out back to Oregon. I got Rebecca. It was Thursday, and I went to that same prayer group that had prophesied for Esther, and I met Bratesval,
black pastor.
The black pastor, yeah, from Kyrgyzstan. And we're all there, and I get Rebecca, and Yevnika, Esther's sister, came with us, and we all fly back. And Yevnika stayed with us for 4 months?
The whole entire time.
The whole time.
Yeah.
She stayed with us and basically raised my daughter because we'll get to it in a little bit, but Esther spent most of the time in the hospital, and I spent most of the time either at work or at the hospital and kind of ping-ponging. So, if Rebecca acts up, we know who to blame for that. No, it was wonderful having Yevnika there, and we couldn't have done it without her. We truly could not have done it without her. She was a godsend, absolutely.
We had to leave her here for a month, and that was a lot already. Mm-hmm. And even having her in the closer state than Oregon, that was good because like I got to see her for an hour or two a day.
She gained a lot of weight living with your mom. That I'll say that much. She fed her
Russian
well.
mom be like.
Russian grandmas. So I get a job, and this is kind of a little side note, but this again is another illustration of the providence of God, right? We've been talking a lot tonight about like idols and about, our God is the only God. And it is true because our God is the only kind of God that I think he has a little sense of humor in the way he provides sometimes. So between where we live and 30 minutes south where the hospital is, there's this little tiny town, border of Connecticut, called Enfield. And in Enfield, right off the highway, is a Chick-fil-A. And Esther, out of the blue, we're looking for jobs, and she goes, hey, what about Chick-fil-A? I'm like, nah, I haven't worked there since high school. It'd be embarrassing to go back. I'm 26. I'm like a, grown man going back to kindergarten all over again. This is going to be weird. They did have good benefits. And so I swallowed my pride. I applied, got an interview. Okay, here we go. So I go in, and I'm kind of nervous because I'm not exactly the bright and chipper 16-year-old that once applied to Chick-fil-A in Colorado.
You worked at
I worked at a Chick-fil-A in high school in a little town called Castle Rock in Colorado. And that's important because I show up, and this guy in cowboy boots comes out, and he's like, oh, sorry, man, I've been everywhere, but I'm the one doing your interview. I'm actually the owner of this place. And he says, and I'm going to freak you out. I was like, man, you don't have to do that. I'm freaked out already. Like, let's assume I'm already freaked out, and let's just get to it. But he said, I didn't know that I had some little podunk Castle Rock kid coming to my Chick-fil-A. I was like, well, okay, now you're insulting my hometown. What else you got for me? And he goes, do you know the name Joe Weber? That was my old boss. I said, yes, I do. And he goes, well, here's a story for you. That's my old boss. So the guy who owns this Chick-fil-A in Enfield, Connecticut, used to live in my hometown when I lived there. And around the same 5-10 year period, he trained under my Chick-fil-A owner to get his own Chick-fil-A and then moved out to Enfield, Connecticut. So he sees me and he says, oh, you're as good as gold, my friend. And so he ushers me in, and then that's where I worked. And this guy took such good care of us. I mean, we would have thought we were family. I still get chills talking about it. How he looked after us, and he was always doing all kinds of things for us. And he's like, oh, do you guys need this? Do you need anything? Looking after us.
And when Thaddeus was born, Sam got his own baby shower. I didn't get one.
They threw me a baby shower, which was nice. I've never had one before.
Like, I come to work to pick him up because we had one car, so I'd drop him off and then go see Thaddeus after he was born. And I come to work, and there's a bunch of flowers, a bunch of balloons, a bunch of gift bags.
They were bringing it in carts out to the van, like little food wagons full of boxes and bags and balloons. It was wonderful. He was a wonderful man, and I still appreciate him, but it was having, this godly man who grew up in my hometown, and he just, just that connection was made, and I go, okay, that's a God thing. That's totally the Lord looking out for us.
Wait, there's another testimony with Chick-fil-A. Remember the cookie thing?
Oh, yeah. So, the cookie thing. Well, we're jumping ahead in timeline because we're going location by location. That's easier to remember this stuff. When it was one of my I think it was maybe my last shift, one of my last shifts before all this had wrapped up and we were coming back to Oregon. My boss, we're all working, we're all hustling, we're making stuff, and he goes, all right, guys, emergency meeting, let's go. Everybody, emergency meeting, let's go. I'm like, oh my goodness, what's going on? It's a stressful day. We all pile in the back. Everyone except 3 people to run the store. And he explains to everybody, he let me explain my story. And then he explains something that he goes, okay, Samuel doesn't know this. Chick-fil-A, all the Chick-fil-A's in that area did an annual fundraiser by selling cookies for the children's hospital. And the year before, they made $65,000 that they raised last year, 2022, basically, for the children's hospital. And all that money went to build the fetal care center that we had our surgery at.
And I was the first patient there.
Yeah, we didn't mention that, but yeah, she was actually the very first of that kind of surgery at that center. So we broke ground for this center. And what my boss did at that time, he has all these young people there, and he says, you guys, God used your cookie sales last year to help Samuel's son be born this year. And he said, so if that's not something that gets you thinking about the value of your everyday lives, and if you give it to the Lord, the things that he can do, like that's incredible what God can do. So praise God for that too.
Okay, going back to before he was born. After the surgery, 2 weeks after, I was home already, and at 28 weeks, I was pregnant 28 weeks, my water broke. And I was hospitalized until the baby was born. So that was 4 weeks in the hospital.
What was that like, being in the hospital for 4 weeks?
The food is terrible. I refused to eat. I ate for a couple times, and I ordered this burger. I thought it was, a safe choice burger. It sounds good. It comes in this thin with, I don't like beets. But on the side, it had canned beets, and all the beet juice just went into the burger. I was so depressed.
And that was the day that I went down to the cafeteria and got myself a burger, and I got to build it myself, and it was all big and juicy, and I come up like, oh, I got a burger, what'd you get? And she's like, I thought I was getting a burger. So we traded.
So the 4 weeks in the hospital, it was a bit rough. Kind of felt like, a nice prison, because I was not even allowed to go outside. I was outside for 90 minutes. Total of 90 minutes in 4 weeks. So I had my window where I could look outside. I can't even open the windows in my room. And Sam would go home and get Rebecca and Yevnika, and they would come and visit me for an hour or two. On Thursdays, it was a day, and Sundays, it was a full day because Chick-fil-A doesn't work on Sundays. But they would come and visit me, and then they would go back home, and it was just like a constant drive back and forth. Sam would bring Rebecca, and then he would bring her back home to Massachusetts, and then he'll go home, and then couple days a week, I think it was like 2 days maybe, he would come back after work. He would come back to the hospital and stay the night with me. And our plan was, if anything happens, I'm just gonna call him, and he's gonna come to the hospital if the baby's born. But one of the days.
Real fast, if I can butt in, I put more miles on our car during our time out there than our road trip out there and back.
There's a lot of driving.
Mm-hmm. So I had ping pong, home, work, hospital, back and forth. And so.
Yeah. So on one of these days that Sam comes back to the hospital to stay the night, I started bleeding, like a lot. And I got taken to get my emergency C-section. And Thaddeus was born at 32 weeks and 2 days. He was 3 pounds and 4 ounces and 16 inches. He was a tiny baby. He didn't breathe on his own, so he got intubated. I didn't see him until he was all intubated and everything, and in his this big bag to keep him warm. And Sam left. You left me. To see the baby.
Oh yeah, I wanted to see him. Well, okay.
So my blood pressure dropped, and they had to give me extra blood because apparently I wasn't doing so well. So after they took me to the room and recovered, the same day I got to go downstairs, I don't remember, to the NICU to see Thaddeus. Yeah.
Yeah, it was something that, I remember, and we'll show it in a little bit, but I remember looking at, I'm there with Esther during the C-section, And she's just looking at me. We're just talking to each other. We're trying to just
I was like, just
she's
talk
like,
to
just
me.
say
Talk to
anything.
me.
Just talk to me. Just keep
I
our
was freaking
eyes
out.
off of what's going on. And it's I think it was probably much worse for you, that C-section, than the actual surgery, because
Yeah,
you
'cause
were
I was
awake for
awake.
it. Yeah. And then they took him and they wheeled him off right away, and they stick a tube in his throat and they stick all these IVs in him, and they're doing all their stuff with my son. And finally I got to go look at him, and I love Rebecca, and holding her when she was first born was like nothing else, you know. And seeing Thaddeus now was like my heart just doubled in size. And it wasn't the same kind of love. It was, but it was so different, because instead of holding a healthy girl, I'm looking through glass. And it's kind of a faith kind of love. Because when you hold your daughter or your son in your hands for the first time after they're born, there's this immediate, just deep love. This bond just connects, and you're overcome by, wow, this is my child. And when you're looking through this plexiglass, and there's this plastic bag with a little head poking out, and there's tubes everywhere, and he's looking at me though. And I'm looking at him, and I'm like, hey, buddy, I'm your dad. And I that's all I said, over and over and over. And I'm crying. He was crying naturally. He didn't much like it. We couldn't hear him. And that was the most heartbreaking thing of
As you can see, he's
all that.
crying.
You see him crying, but because he has a tube in his throat, no sound comes out. And so there's this little tiny 3-pound potato of a baby. I mean, he's like this big. He's like shorter than the microphone almost. And he's crying, and he's trying to cry, and nothing's coming out. And I'm there behind this glass, and I can't do anything. I can't hold him. I can't touch him. My wife's over here getting blood. My daughter's 40 miles living with my 16-year-old sister-in-law, who's amazing. And that was a time that's one of those times that God lets you see how broken we are, and how he was right there with me. And he goes, hey, son, this, and I remember the Lord impressing this on my heart then, and through the months to come, like, this is what I think, this is how I feel when I look at you. That when we walk from God, I'm sorry I'm preaching, but when we walk from God, he feels that separation. And when we're, by our choices or circumstances, in a position where we're not responding to him, even when it feels like we're not able to be with him, he's right there, and he's like, hey, I'm still your father. Hey, buddy, I'm your dad. I'm your father. I'm right here. So he was born, and Esther, you stayed in the hospital not super long after that. You
We
came
couldn't
back.
even hold him for like a couple days. Or
Almost
I
a
think
week.
2 weeks.
I think it was over a week.
Yeah, we couldn't hold him. We just came there and just put our hands on him and just, gladly все. But we couldn't physically hold him because he wasn't healthy enough.
Yeah, and he was all kinds of.
So after he was born, a couple days later, so he was born, and he was just laying like this, but his feet were like 90 degree and just sticking up, and then his toes, feet would go this way, so his legs go up, and then his feet go that way, and I'm like, why are his legs just sticking up like 90-degree angle? What's going on? And a couple of days later, the doctors were looking at his, I think, a heart rate. It was a bit too high, and they decided that maybe he's in pain, and they went and did X-rays. Apparently, he had two femur fractures, and on one leg it was a tib-fib fracture. So he had fractured legs, and I think the best position was like that. So he was born with that, and that's something that he had to go through too. Yeah. But I think now they're better.
Yeah, they're all healed up now. But I think one thing that we want to illustrate is that you can't say all that we went through, obviously, because it's months and months and months, and you guys would fall asleep by then because it's not your baby. But when you are placed in that place of seeing, we're in this constant struggle, right? And we're not only struggling with the logistical things of our daughter and work and all these things ping pong around, because that's still going on. We're also, dealing with and kind of going against nurses because it's our son, but he's in their hospital. And so his legs are broken. They get the call on what to do about that. They get the call on what to do with his breathing and his this and his that. And so we're literally having to trust the Lord because we didn't really have a lot of faith in some of the staff that were watching over Tad. There were a lot of decisions that they made. It's more of a liberal state, and a lot of them weren't believers. They made a lot of decisions regarding the care for our son that we were like, I would never have done that if I had any choice. We didn't have a choice. And coming up to, basically, we started over those months and are still now seeing, okay, what's the result of the surgery? What happened? What are there benefits to it? Are there side effects? And essentially, right now...
So 2 weeks after the surgery, remember, 2 weeks after the surgery, I had to go get another MRI. And even 2 weeks after the surgery, they noticed that he had before the surgery, he had Chiari-2 malformation, which is when the spine pulls on the brain. And that's no good. But 2 weeks after surgery, after the MRI, they saw that was resolved. It went away.
And that one's big because it basically pulls the brain into the brainstem into the spine. And the brainstem is where so much of our essential functions are formed. So you're talking, breathing and hormones and all kinds of things that are impacted by that. So when he was in the womb, you're right, they saw that his brain was being pulled into his spine, and there was all this fluid buildup. And then after he was born, a couple weeks later, they said, okay, that issue resolved. So praise God, his brain was starting to form. We started seeing, he started to wiggle and twitch his legs a little bit.
At first, he wouldn't really move his legs because of those fractures. But once they started healing, we started to notice way more leg movement. Even now, when we change him, his legs they're crazy. They move a lot, and it's great because I compare him to my brother, and we all know, if you guys know him, we know what he's going through and how he looks. And comparing him to my brother, Thaddeus is doing really good. From what I know, I obviously can't ask him, but from what I know, he has feelings in his legs. Like I would touch his legs, like pinch them, and then he would move them back. So that's great. I know Isaac doesn't have any of that, and Thaddeus can, he uses his legs. He can pee on his own, and he has good bowel movements right now. And those are also the things that kids with spina bifida struggle.
At this point, we're not necessarily out of the woods with some things. For instance, he can't feel his feet right now. Really, normal babies, you kind of just can brush a feather against them and they'll pull their foot back. Him, you can just all day long and his feet just do this. So his legs move. And what they are assuming, what they're thinking is that, the damage goes further down. So maybe his hips and knees work, but not so much his feet. So we're still praying about that. But I think one of the things that we got from a lot of this was that we were so thankful that, all these challenges, all these dangers happened, that he shouldn't have survived this, couldn't have survived that, kept going and going. And the Lord just every step of the way was holding my wife, holding our son, making sure that he, got to meet all you guys.
Yeah, and when we were at the beginning of this, if we looked ahead of time, I don't even know how we would go through it, plan it out. But when we just took one day at a time, like today we're packing, okay, let's pack. And then Saturday we're moving, okay, let's just go and see where it takes us. And on every day, if we go through something, God was just there, opening up doors and people and community. And it's just amazing how he was looking after us.
Yeah. So I know we're getting close on time. We were thinking we were going to be a lot faster. Turns out you're like me with the microphone.
I get nervous.
I think, and the final kind of just little detail about it is that you guys who were here on Christmas Eve service, the wonderful American service we had, that was right after Tad had a brain surgery. And what happened was he had a whole bunch of fluid building up in his brain that did not go away with the surgery. It wasn't expected to. And over time, they were looking at it, and his head just kept getting bigger and bigger. And we're like, he's either getting really smart or something's wrong. And turns out he is smart, but yeah, something was wrong. So they had a couple options. They say, well, either we put a drain in there, because it wasn't draining. He said, I think of it like the sink's clogged and the faucet's on. We need to make the drain bigger, turn off the faucet. And if that doesn't work, then he's going to need a shunt, which is just a plastic pipe. So this last surgery we were praying about that. We
did not want to shunt.
We did not want to shunt because there's all kinds of complications with that.
And you can't even play any sports. You always have to be careful of your head, not to
And we
have
were
the
okay
ball
with
hit him or anything like that,
Yeah.
because it's dangerous for him. But there was another option of a surgery. It was to make a drill hole and have the fluid just drain out on its own. And what's the word?
like an EVT.
No, the cataract.
Oh, cauterize.
Yeah,
So they burn the part of the brain that makes brain fluid, and they make the drain bigger. So basically, his brain is now making less fluid, and it's draining more.
But with that surgery, the doctor said that there's only 30% chance of success for a baby that small. For Thaddeus, it was only 30% success. And we still said, no, let's just try this. Try to do whatever you can, but do not put a shunt in there. And he went off with Thaddeus to do the surgery. He comes back. We're very nervous. I remember that feeling. We're just sitting there like, what is he going to say? Because he might come back and tell us, well, he has a shunt now. And that's one thing that we really did not want. And he comes in and he says the surgery was a success. So another answered prayer.
Praise God.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
So we're ready.
That's where we are.
Yeah, we have a little video.
I was actually thinking maybe if you guys want, we can just close out here. We can pray, and then if you guys want, we could do the video afterwards. It's like 5 minutes, or what do you want? We could do it now? Okay. And then I'll just close this out after that. I'll be really quick. This is a video they put together just as context, if you want to pause it. You want to pause it real fast? That's him. This is a video that they have their annual fundraising gala, and it's a bid for kids, and they have all these rich people come and give money for the hospital. They made this video and they played it at the fundraising gala. So they played this video for a whole bunch of rich doctors and lawyers to basically use our child to give them money.
And we got to go to the gala.
We did.
It was cool.
It was cool. But that's for another time.
And Sam got his tux paid for, and I got a dress for free.
Okay, but tell me another time. Yeah. Are we sitting down for this?
Oh, they said just stand here.
Oh, we gotta stand here?
Yeah. Okay, go.
All right.
A fetal care center is just the extension of the care that we administer to newborns to the unborn. But it really is just moving the goalpost from when the baby is born to as early in development as 15 or 16 weeks. Esther is very special for a number of reasons. Esther was the first open fetal surgery that we performed here at Connecticut Children's.
On May 25th, we were
celebrating our first daughter's 1-year birthday, and that's also the day we found out that our boy has spina bifida.
I remember that moment that we first found out. It was a very, like, the whole room just went really quiet, us and the doctor. That was a very heavy moment for us.
There are hospitals in the US that do fetal surgeries while the baby is still in the womb, which we've never heard about that before. And we got excited about that because there's a hope, maybe, that we can do something to help him in the future. But with Rebecca at 23 weeks, I had to get an emergency cerclage. Because of that, none of the fetal care programs in the US would take her case. We actually went to a prayer group and we prayed, and the next day I get a phone call from my OB and she said that Dr. Crumbleholm is accepting us.
When you love your child, sometimes you're willing to do crazy things like pack up and drive 3,000 miles in order to get them a chance at being able to have a better life.
Dr. Crumbleholm is a national hero in this field. He's a pioneer. There are only a handful of places that have a comprehensive program. Through the 7 he started, and now we're number 4.
Fetal care centers become the front door of the children's hospital. And these little tiny babies that are diagnosed with a problem prenatally end up being part of the children's family for often the rest of their lives. So Thaddeus had an operation, and so did his mom.
When they do fetal surgery, they open you up and they take the baby out, and that's how they do the repair. And then they would put the baby back and stitch everything up and hope he stays cooking. Thaddeus was born at 32 weeks and 2 days. He was 3 pounds and 4 ounces.
I'm looking at this tiny human being. I've never seen a human baby that small. And all I could get out was, "Hey buddy, I'm your dad." And I probably said it 4 or 5 times before I realized I was just repeating myself, but I couldn't say nothing else.
All of these very talented specialists who come together for a tiny little fetus. The miracle is when you see this patient when they're born. At 6 days, at 6 months, at 6 years. Some of Dr. Crumbleholm's earlier patients are now sassy teenagers. To see them and their quality of life, the fact that they've survived a disease or an anomaly that 20 years ago they wouldn't have survived, is absolutely miraculous.
Making a gift to the fetal care center is like an investment in the future, because many of these babies in years past never survived. There's now a whole generation of children who are growing up and developing and will be the future of this nation.
To be able to have a place where we could be together, where we can function as a family, I think not only would that be incredible personally, but I think that also does a lot to speed up recovery times. It does so much for the family and the individuals involved. And if we can do that here in Connecticut and have actually that place, I think that's amazing. To be able to support this and to be able to give, ordinary parents like us an extraordinary chance to do something that we've never been able to do before for our kids.
Well, so now Подожди сейчас. We're still, I mean, we have this huge hospital bill, and that's something that we have to trust God. And we're not out of the woods yet, but there's still things that we're praying for. If you guys can also pray for us for Thaddeus and to get this whole bill resolved. I know that God started this whole thing. He kind of opened up the doors for us, so he kind of has to close everything and make it perfect. So to give us, more trust in him.